Hello and welcome to another episode of Ringside Fracas. I'm your host, Naeem, and today, of course, after a tank fight week, there's only one person that we really need to bring on the pod, and that's Jide. Jide, how are you, bro?
I'm good, man. These guys can see the smile on my face, man. I've been waiting for this day all my life, literally all my life. Like I remember I was born when I came out. I remember the doctor said you came to watch a guy called Tank Davis take it L, and I knew that's been my ambition till now, and I almost achieved it yesterday. But to me, I still got the moral victory. So yeah, man, I'm very happy right now. How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm sure everyone can tell, this week we had the fight between Tank Davis and Lamont Roach, a fight that initially went on paper when it was announced wasn't really received as well. So going into it, I think the buzz behind the fight, especially over here, I'm not sure about the US. Probably there was a bit of buzz in the US, but around here, there's not that much buzz about the fight. But the fight didn't go the way most expected it to. I mean, Tank Davis had to work hard in that fight. There was a knockdown that wasn't called a knockdown, and the scorecards were a bit dubious in the sense of some people thought Tank lost, some people thought Tank got a draw, some people thought it was all over the place, so they couldn't make their minds up. It was very an interesting fight week, and of course, if we've got Tank fight week as well, we've got to get Chris involved. Chris, how are you, bro?
How's it going, lads? You good?
Yeah, good fight week, isn't it?
Oh, man. Man. I had to be here.
Listen,
Yeah.
I want the audience to know. Chris went and bought a Porsche because of what happened last night. Man.
Oh, get out of here, bro.
He's coming back from the dealership right now, man.
Yeah.
I mean, from the excitement from last night, I guess it's more than celebratory, isn't it? But let's get straight into it. I mean, the fight was like it wasn't what we expected. I mean, Lamont Roach, I've been watching his career for quite a while. I watched his fights with Gervonta Herring, and when he kind of fell off the radar, and then made a comeback by beating Hector Luis Garcia, and then on Pro Box as well when he defended his world title against Crawley last year. He was someone that I thought was a decent level fighter. He's got that American showing about him. He's got all the fundamentals about him, but just at the top level, he's just never that guy. He was never that dude. If you had to grade it in terms of grades, he was always like to me a B level fighter or B plus level fighter. He was never that A minus or A plus level fighter. So when this fight got announced, I wasn't the biggest fan of it because I thought it was similar to the Hector Luis Garcia fight where you're bringing up this champion from the low weight class. You've got your other contemporaries in your weight class. Go after them. They're there. They're fights to be made. As long as you approach them, you are the cash cow. You're the face of boxing, allegedly. Then this fight should be easier to make. So I wasn't the biggest fan of this, and I thought it would be typical for Tank fashion. Starts out slow, gets out of box for a bit, finds his timing, and he starts setting the traps, and he puts Roach out of there. Boy, was I wrong. He started out slow. He was trying to set the traps. He was trying to get going in the fifth and sixth round. But Lamont Roach fought a very good game plan, countering him when he started to try counter, trading with him at times, was composed, never let the moment get to him. Looked like he belonged in there, and looked like he was familiar with Tank and knew Tank. And he made that a tough fight, into the point where I thought I scored it to Lamont Roach 7-5. I thought Lamont Roach did more than enough to win the rounds. And there was that dubious knockdown that we'll also get into. Jide, your thoughts, because I know you've been waiting to speak. What's your thoughts on last night's performance?
Man, how the turntables turn. How the turntables turn. I'm just gonna say, I'm so happy, because I've had for years. I've had debates in a group chat. I've always said I rate Tank Davis's ability, his raw ability to box. I've always said is A plus. It's A grade. It's up there. But my argument about this guy is you never know how good you are unless you fight your contemporaries. And he can't say he's in a weak era where there's no one to fight. There's been guys to fight throughout his reign from 130, not even 130, before 126. There's been guys from that weight class all the way up to 135, even when he had his little brief foray into 140. There's always been guys, but he has not fought to no one. And I'm getting told this guy is the best boxer, pound for pound top 3, pound for pound top 5. I'm being told he's the hardest punching fighter ever. I call him pea shooter. Like, not because I don't think he's got power, it's because I believe he's unloading on guys who's a couple levels above. And my thing has always been I've been called a hater. I'll take it. I don't like guys that um I don't like guys that disrespect the sport of boxing. And people like Tank, Fury, these guys disrespect the sport of boxing and disrespect the fans. And my thing is, I rate him as a fighter, but when you've not fought nobody, we do not know how good you are. Before we knew how great Floyd Mayweather was, he fought guys. He fought the A+ names of his era, and we're like, you know what? Before the money, this was Pretty Boy Floyd. Before the money Mayweather shit, yeah, he's that man. He's that dude. Even Spence, we get onto him, right? But he fought the top welterweights of his era, left almost no stones unturned. Every guy we call that dude has to prove they're that dude, except Tank Davis. And you hear people say stuff like, Lomachenko is the most protected fighter. All the Canelo's the most protected fighter. They will name all these guys across all these other weight classes, saying that they're most protected. But I have never, I promise you, I've been watching boxing since I've been properly, anyways, as a proper hardcore fan since I was, let's say, 15, 16. I have never seen a more manufactured career than Gervonta Tank Davis. But anyway, now time to get to the fight. First 4 or 5 rounds is a Tank fight. He starts slow. He's trying to read his opponents. And I feel like Lamont was winning those rounds. I'll say the first 4, maybe the first 5 rounds, I give like 4 of them to Lamont Roach, right? Like he just done a better work in those early stages. But then I'll say Gervonta picked it up. And then he started doing what Gervonta does, taking over. Again, I watched this fight knowing the result. So this is not me watching it live, by the way. So Gervonta started picking up, finding his momentum, getting into it. And I'll say by the time we get to that, like even round 8, I feel like Lamont buzzed Gervonta a few times. And this guy has not got a lot of power, by the way. But it was back and forth. I say by round 9, they were quite even on my scorecard. It was quite a close fight. And this guy, because he's using female products on his hair, and he didn't really vet it properly, the gel got in his eyes. It's not our fault you want to be a bad B, Gervonta Davis. It is not our fault. And he went and took a knee. And what made me sick is the referee started counting, by the way. It wasn't a situation where he just didn't count. He started counting. Then it's like Gervonta told him something like, it's not that deep, it's my eye. Then he lets him go to the corner. What is that? That has never happened in the years I've watched boxing. I have never seen that. I have never ever seen that situation ever. You start counting and then you stop mid count to let a man essentially just walk off his corner and let them wipe his eye. What are we doing? What are we? You know what I'm saying?
One sec, your mic has gone a bit low. Just check your computer because your mic's gone a bit low.
One sec.
No, now it's better.
Better, yeah. All right, cool. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's a very manufactured champion and manufactured situation where PBC need Gervonta Davis. They need to protect his own. That's what's happened here. Gervonta and his fans were out here crying, see, Hamza Shiraz, Turkey went and told him he's losing on the cards to make sure he wins. A week later, literally a week later, that is the most poetic irony I've not seen anything so ironic in my life. We had this guy get saved, not even by the judges, by the referee. Because to me, it was a close fight. I scored it the same way as you know him, 7-5. And if you include the knockdown, it's essentially 8-4. If you want to look at it that way, right? It was a close fight. I could see the draw. I can actually see the draw, although I don't agree. But Lamont Roach got robbed, and I feel like he needs to file an appeal. If I was him, I'd file. He probably won't get anything. Won't get nothing from it to demand a rematch. If they're gonna give him the immediate rematch, because I saw Gervonta saying there's no immediate rematch in the aftermath. If I'm him, I'm filing an appeal to either get that decision overturned or give me an immediate rematch, because to me, he got robbed. And Gervonta got exposed. He's a low volume counter puncher, front foot counter puncher. Great power, great boxer. But I keep telling people, he gets destroyed by Shakur. If you're a pure boxer, you destroy Gervonta because He's not willing to do what, like just throw caution to the wind and throw punches. Maybe he's got stamina issues. Guys that got crazy power and crazy explosive, they tend to have stamina issues. Look at Canelo. Maybe that's just what it is, and we don't really know because he's not really tested himself. But if he fights Shakur, he gets taken to school. 23 punches around will not do it against Shakur Stevenson. And now I believe Keyshawn Davis does him in. Gervonta Davis is the most protected fighter I've ever seen in my life, the most manufactured resume I've ever seen in my life. And he said he's got 4 more fights in boxing. That's making me sick. I hope he sticks to his 2 or 3 more fights. He's got to leave our sport. The guy is no good for boxing. It's either you fight Shakur Stevenson or fight Keyshawn Davis, or just fuck off. A cherry gone wrong. He picks Lamont Roach, and it's backfired. I wish PBC Samps was here. All that talking, trying to act like Lamont Roach is some top bro. The top 10 guys in the lightweight division are better than him. Lamont Roach has been an 8 to 10 year perennial contender in the lower weight class, and he only became champion when everyone left. That's the guy that they're trying to gaslight you and say he's some elite fighter. I don't want to disrespect Lamont Roach. He's a good fundamental boxer. As you can see, he's good counter puncher. He's got decent speed, good footwork. He's good. There's no bells and whistles there. He's just a good fighter. But when we're talking about the elites, the A+ guys, he's just not that. And this is what I'm saying about Gervonta. He'd be fighting the Frank Martins of the world, ain't done nothing. His best fight in his resume is Pedraza, who fought 200 years ago. Like, we need to be very real about this guy. He is not who we're being made and being sold to. He's not the face of boxing. This gonna probably do about 100K pay-per-view, even though all the haters tuned in. Yeah, I tuned in after the fact, and I'm a hater. But I'm so happy this happened. I'm so happy. All these fans try to gaslight and lie to us about what this guy's capable of. We finally seen it. But yeah, that's me done, man.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I love the fact that I kept hearing the tick, tick sound on your thing, the fire alarm going off. But yeah, Chris, I mean, there's a lot to unpack from there. Your thoughts on that kind of performance? Like, was that an off night for Gervonta Davis? Was that a reflection of who he actually is as a fighter?
No, I agree with the both of you in terms of scoring. I think personally, Lamont did enough to win. Aside from the knockdown, I'm not even I'll get into the knockdown later. But I thought he did enough. I think personally, and not even to be on Tank's side or to pick any side, but I think Lamont proved himself as a worthy fighter. I think he proved himself as someone who should be staple in the division. Even after the fight, post-fight, he showed a really good mentality. During the actual fight, I didn't see anything different from Tank. It didn't even look like an off night at all. It looked like your regular Tank performance. The only difference was when he landed that shot that catches out a lot of people, Roach was prepared and he was durable. I think those are the only 2 things, in my opinion, that made any difference. Tank himself, we can talk about the issues and the pitfalls of the performance. We can talk about his low punch output. We can talk about how he waits too long to take action, waiting for certain shots. We can talk about how he let Roach grow into the fight and gain more confidence. But he does that all the time. And people give him a pass for it. And when you try and criticize it, and when you try and tell him and tell his fans that, eventually he's going to come against someone who he's not going to be able to knock out. He's had, how many times has he been behind on the scorecards, like in his fights? A lot more than someone of his caliber would expect to see, for sure. But ultimately, typical Tank performance. I don't think there's any excuse for why he performed the way he did. I don't even think it was a particularly bad Tank performance. Now, in terms of the knockdown in itself, knockdown was crazy. Knockdown was crazy. I was talking to the group chat earlier, and like I said, I really do believe the excuse about the hair stuff. Do you know what I mean? I've had braids in the past, and you know, I've done sport, and yeah, it can affect your vision if it gets in your eye. 100%. That doesn't change the fact that he took a knee. The rules of boxing, he's taken a knee, no matter what it is, whether he got broke his hand, whether someone blew something into his eye, whether he tripped and fell. Um, sorry, whether he tripped, he's gone down in it. Obviously, in terms of, oh sorry, not tripped and fell, obviously, but he's decided to go down of his own accord. He's made a conscious decision to go down, to take a knee. It's not even like he crouched down or he bent down or he stood back. He literally took a knee because he didn't want to get hit. He didn't want to get hit in it. So ultimately, judges have folded. They've seen the occasion. They folded to the occasion. They've seen that this is the cash cow. We don't want to make no rash decisions. We know how it's going to affect the scorecards. Um, they've done all they can do to protect this guy. Like Jide said, same guy was talking about Turkey a week ago. But yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? We wanted to see Tank in the big fights. We wanted to see him prove himself. I wouldn't mind if Tank loses. If you fight everyone, if you fight all the best guys, you're gonna lose once. It is what it is. It's just the way boxing goes. But he just doesn't wanna entertain. He doesn't want to take risks. He's all about making as much money for as little as possible. You know, it's the PBC policy. Do you know what I mean? Money over everything, over the fans, over absolutely everything else. He had a mentor in Floyd, so you know, it's probably rubbed off, whether they're friends or not at this point in time. But yeah, for me, I just don't believe Tank has done enough to have the status that we think he has. The face of boxing, I don't think that's it for me personally. Not done enough. He's not had that career-defining win. We saw him against a guy who we expected to blow out. Most of us, none of us stayed up for the fight. We didn't think it was competitive. It's one of those fights where it happens, and in the morning you're just trying to see how he knocked him out. Same thing happened with Frank Martin. I don't know. Me personally, I don't know many of us who stayed up for either of those fights. If it was on and it was at a good time, obviously it's in the US, man, in the UK, would have stayed up and watched it for sure. But I'm not staying up to watch him beat someone I expect him to beat. It's not competitive, and yeah, that's the way it's gone.
Yeah, and I'm not sure anyone stayed up to watch that fight last night. Who would have thought to waste their 4 a.m.s on that fight? Clearly not me. Anyway, yeah, I agree with the sentiments from both of you. I think that especially the knockdown. I want to come on straight onto the knockdown. I mean, like that especially we got here from Daniel Ojo, and the ref cost Roach the fight. I can't believe Tank wasn't counted. I mean, yeah, if you look at the scorecards that were given, it was 114, it was 115, 113 to Tank, and then it was 114, 114 split with the others judges. If that knockdown was counted, of course, it can change the outcome of the fight in terms of how Tank performs in the next couple of rounds. But let's say that knockdown was counted and the fight kept on going the way it did. Roach gets the fight on the scorecards because he gets the extra point. He gets that split decision win. So he got robbed there, in my opinion, because that was a knockdown. Should it get counted? And it doesn't make sense. When I first saw it live, I was thinking, okay, this is weird, but Tank must have broken something. It looks like he broke something. Like he had to take a knee. It looks like, he broke a hand, and that instant shock or pain just does something to you, and you just have to take a second. Fair enough. That happens. Floyd did against Carlos Hernandez. Hurt his hand when he hit him, went down, came back up, and it was just knocked down, got straight back to work and won the fight. The weird thing was he did that. Then he went to the corner and got a towel on his face to clear everything up. You're not allowed to do that in the middle of a fight. You got the rounds for that, but in the middle of the fight, you can't do that. And some referees were saying he's very lucky that is grounds that you can even get disqualified for going straight to the corner and getting something done without having a round in between. Like this is an unsanctioned break. And the way Steve Willis just handled that situation was so bad. It was just like no one was clear what was going. There was no count. Obviously, it had to be a knockdown. It's not a knockdown. It's a letter of the law. You have to follow the letter of the law, and didn't apply it. But also, he then said to him, "Oh, it looked like you took a knee. That would have been a knockdown." Yeah, because it is a knockdown. What are you telling him for? Like count it. Like you have to count it. Why are you trying to be his best friend for? Trying to warn him what to do and not to do like that. Like you have to tell him that that's a knockdown, and you have to count it, and that changes the fight significantly because Tank would have to come out more, and we get a different outcome. So it was just weird in terms of how it was all handled, and I was just so baffled by it because it's just like you're such an experienced referee. Like how you did this, it doesn't make sense, and how you didn't count it as a ref. How you didn't count the knockdown? It's just insane. I mean, like that is a big thing. And then I knew when it went to the scorecards that Lamont Roach is never going to get the benefit of the doubt because always the pay-per-view fighter, the guy that's the cash cow, the guy that's the home fighter in this case, like this is his town. He's the one that's going to get the favor, and it's just a shame because Roach did a lot of good work in there, and he deserved to get that win. He deserves to get that win over Tank and be known as the first guy to dethrone Tank, take his own, and all of that, become a two-weight world champion. And he's not getting all that. And like Jide said, the immediate rematch isn't happening. But that whole knockdown debacle was just kind of just insane to think about. Like that it happened, but it never got counted. And it's literally right in front of our eyes. It's a clear-cut case of if you take a knee, that's a knockdown. And he did take a knee, and it didn't get counted. Jide, one question that in regards to that, Say asks, you were adamant that Wilder was the most protected fighter ever. Are you sure it's Gervonta Tank Davis?
They come from the same branch, man. It's the same tree, the PBC tree. They're just branches of that same tree. Yes, I would say Tank's had better fighters in his resume than Wilder did. So yes, they're both very, very protected. But at least Wilder ended up fighting Fury. Although it was a cherry, we can all agree Fury was a cherry, but it was a ripe cherry. It was a credible cherry. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't Lamont Roach. So again, I'm not here to disrespect Lamont Roach and say he's nobody, but no, like Gervonta is taking the piss because Wilder was never called the face of boxing. Wilder was never called. Wilder was just called the hardest puncher ever with a bunch of bums, and we want undisputed on my terms. I want 50-50. That was the Wilder shtick, right? Going off the coattails of Joshua. Gervonta has just been fed absolute cream puffs and gaslighting us fans that he is a top 5, top 3 pound for pound fighter. I have never seen anything like it. So yeah, I don't know, man. Again, branch of the same tree, PBC tree, and that tree's dying, man. That tree's dying. That's a 1,000-year-old oak tree, and the last legs currently dying. So yeah.
Chris, do you agree with that? That Gervonta Davis is another example of a huge protected fighter?
He is a protected fighter. Now, I think what's important is that to a degree, most fighters are protected. So we have to remember that to a degree, to a certain extent. When you're guiding a fighter throughout the ranks and you're feeding them to, lower level opponents, that is protection in a sense. The difference is it gets to a point, there should be a turning point where, especially when you reach stardom, superstardom, when you become a name in the sport, where essentially you should now be looking at taking out the other top fighters that are around you. And this is the problem that we have with Tank. Tank has essentially been sitting at the pinnacle of the lightweight division for years now. Do you know what I mean? And like I said before, if we try and name one real career-defining fight that everyone knows Tank for, the general public don't know. All the general public know is that he knocks people out and he embarrasses them. That's all they know. Ask the average Tank fan what his best win is. They won't be able to tell you. Most won't be able to tell you. Who's going to pull up Pedraza's name? They're not going to know Pedraza's name. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure people don't even know Frank Martin's name. They might know what he looks like, but they ain't got a clue about what his name is. So yeah, he has been protected, and we can talk about the politics of promotional companies and the issues of setting up fights and whatnot. But honestly, I really do believe if you want a fight made as a fighter and you believe that you can get that fight, you can get that win, your promotional company is going to get that fight sorted out. Do you know what I mean? And it just doesn't feel like PBC want him to have any grief or any problems. I don't know how Tank feels about himself. I don't see him as, personally, I don't see him as the kind of fighter who is afraid of other fighters in his demeanor and the way he speaks. We don't know. I don't know for sure, but he doesn't come across as someone who's scared. But the way he's been curated, he's definitely protected. His words after this fight were so telling. Essentially, he couldn't commit to the rematch. He couldn't commit to the rematch. You've just taken an L, right? Essentially, he's taken an L by not winning this fight, by drawing with a guy who people expected to be blown out. And pause. And then your first thought when people ask you, all right, so what's next, the rematch, is to say you don't think that's happening, and you don't think that's happening next year or until next year. We're in March. We're in March, and you're telling me you don't think this is going to happen until next year. And obviously, when we look at his potentials, his potential opponents, who are they going to be? We know it's not going to be Shakur. We know it's not going to be Keyshawn Davis. Who is he going to fight? Who is he going to fight to prove that he is this amazing fighter that he says he is? Who's he going to fight to say he's the face of boxing? Say what you like about Canelo's cherry-picking chronicles as well, but he's done more than enough, right, to have status over a guy like Gervonta Tank Davis. So, yeah, he's protected. The debate whether he's more protected than Wilder, I think it is debatable. I'd arguably say he's more successfully protected, but yeah, I think it's arguable in any which way, personally.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. Is more successfully protected, because even during Wilder's heyday, we saw bullshit with the refs as well. When Ortiz cracked him, and the ref gave him 200 years to get to recover. So
Yeah.
they both. It's just the PBC finish from the same branch in the tree. Innit? Naim, you're mute.
Sorry. Even when you were saying about the opponents, like Life of Bodge here says, for the good of boxing, Tank's next opponent will be under scrutiny. When it comes to a certain level, and Tank's always been promoted as this pound for pound level, you know, you've seen in so many people's lists that he's in the top 3. When you're in that kind of atmosphere, that's the bubble that you're trying to put yourself into, the standards that you'll be held at is quite higher. Now, if, for example, if Keyshawn Davis, who right now none of us really rate as a pound for pound level fighter, let's say, for example, he decided to fight Lamont Roach, it wouldn't be received as well, but it'll still be a decent fight for him. It'll be one of the better names on his record. It will be one of the guys that you think, okay, let's see what you've got against him. But for someone like Tank, if we're now rating you at pound for pound level, the standards are set higher. We've got to put you at elite standards. It's like, you know, for example, Inoue's got credit. Inoue and Canelo, for example, they've got credit in the bank, but right now the fights that they're taking aren't great, which is why they're getting criticized. I'm the biggest Inoue fan, and I'm going to criticize him for his next fight that he's going to take in May against Cardenas, because Cardenas is a top 10 fighter, and for any world champion, that's a decent opponent. You're not just any world champion. You're one of the guys we're trying to see as the top pound for pound, one of the best boxers in the world. We're looking at the big names, the elite names, the names that set your legacy apart. Tank has always just been, I'm a good world champion. He's never gone for the names that set me apart. So it's quite disappointing to see, because these are the standards you're set. If you want to be called pound for pound level fighter, these are the things that you've got to do. But for, you know, Bodge says, and like you said as well, Chris, about his next opponent. Well, I've got some theory. Obviously, Tank said in the build-up to this fight that he was going to call out his next opponent. And in the press conference, he said his next opponent actually showed up to the fight, came to his locker room, and they haven't really announced it yet. I think his next opponent, if he blasted out Lamont Roach the way he thought he was going to do, it was going to be Jake Paul. I genuinely think they were going to announce Tank versus Jake Paul. They're going to do some whatever fight that they were going to do, because Jake Paul was there at the fight. Shakur was also there, but Shakur has a reason to be there. These are two fighters in around his weight class. He'll show up, and because they've been actively campaigning to get that fight. Jake wants that fight, but he never really shows up to these type of events like that. And showed up, was in the locker room, and Tank said he was in the locker room. I genuinely think that was the initial plan of announcing Jake Paul versus Tank, or whichever way you want to put it, whoever comes first. Which obviously now I think they're kind of hesitant on pulling the trigger on because, of course, Tank's PR is now kind of not great because he's got this draw and the knockdown. And if he adds this to it, it might be even worse. It might just snowball. Jide, what do you think about that theory of Jake Paul was probably the next opponent?
I believe it, man. It was going to be Jake Paul. It was going to be another freak show fight. Tank, the 135-pounder, fighting the cruiserweight in Jake Paul. Ooh. Like, absolute nonsense. He's been struggling to justify his status as the face of boxing. Apart from the Garcia fight, his pay-per-views average 170 to 200,000. Nobody's watching. No one's trying to pay $80 to watch him fight a bunch of cream puffs. So, and the problem is PBC, he demands a certain guarantee. I don't know, but I could imagine his guarantee is like 5 million, 5 to 10 million. I don't know what it is. Seeing like Michael Matto saying it could have been Pitbull, it could have been him. It could have been Pitbull as well. But essentially, the reason why I could imagine it being someone like Jake Paul is a Jake Paul and Tank fight will do over 1 million pay-per-views, facts. And then he can say he's got 2 fights on the bank of over 1 million pay-per-view, can go into any negotiation and bully everyone else. Pitbull is also a name that I think also made sense, although he didn't go into his locker room, because Pitbull's been campaigning for that fight. Pitbull's been ducking everyone else to try to get that fight. And it's a credible name in the grand scheme of things, right?
Is it credible?
No, for him. I'm not saying it's credible as in like he's a credible name. Like for me, bro, Tank made Pitbull because Pitbull done so well, quote unquote, in the first fight. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like he could easily milk it and say, this is an X140 champion. Do you know what I mean? Like they can sell that. So I could see that. But I truly do believe it was a Jake Paul fight. I think it was going to be a circus show. And then, like you said, he had 3 more fights. He would have beaten Roach, beaten Jake Paul, and then maybe fight someone good at the end of the year or early next year, and then retire. That's what I think they were going to do. But now this is obviously put spanner in the works.
Yeah, Chris, what's your thoughts on this whole, whether it is Jake Paul, if it's Pitbull Cruz, whoever it could be, because it's clearly not Shakur. You made it clear that's not Shakur. Next.
So, early this morning, I actually said I feel like Tank should go and fight Jake Paul. And the reason I said that is because at this point, I just don't expect him to fight anyone serious anymore. I don't see him as a guy who wants to entertain people. I just see him as a guy who wants to make highlight reels. Do you know what I mean? Wants to braid his hair. Just not do anything serious for anyone apart from himself. Do you know what I mean? And as such, I feel like the only entertainment we may get out of him is if he was to fight Jake Paul. And the sad thing is, Jake Paul would probably be, it's definitely his biggest name. It'd probably be his toughest fight. Do you know what I mean? Jake Paul was probably his toughest fight, if we're going to be real. I don't know what weight they'd fight at if they were to fight. Jake is quite a heavy set guy, so he's got no chance of coming down to anywhere near 135. He'd probably have to come in around 170. But I just don't see any other entertainment. Pitbull Cruz, if he'd beaten Lamont Roach, would have sounded like something that Tank would do. Would any of us be impressed by that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, we saw the fight. We knew that he had an injured hand. We saw how the fight was going. Pitbull Cruz didn't do anything special. I don't know how they've managed to make a name out of Pitbull Cruz just out of that performance, but they've done it somehow. Pitbull Cruz has looked shoddy ever since. He's not looked good against, or he's not looked that great against anyone of note. And just no one wants to see Pitbull. No one wants to see Pitbull. People just want to see him fight Shakur or fight someone of the caliber of Keyshawn Davis. That is it. At this point in time, it's just ridiculous. It's like Fury coming out of retirement to come and fight some sort of bum. I don't know, Otto Wallin too. It doesn't make sense. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody wants to see these fights. It's prize fighting, yes. You're fighting for a purse, yes. But the reason why you're getting these purses is because you're fighting fights that people want to see. And honestly, people need to start really hitting these fighters where it hurts, man, in their pockets, and not supporting these shoddy money grab fights. Credit to Lamont Roach. I respect him. I actually think he's a good fighter. I think he's decent. I feel he'd be competitive against the best of them, but he shouldn't have been in that position anyway. I don't feel like he should have been in that position. That's the kind of fight I'd expect from Keyshawn Davis. Do you know what I mean? Someone who is still on the up and up. He's not at the pinnacle of the division. He's trying to make a name for himself. At the top, you should be beating all the top contenders. You should be fighting all the top contenders. You might lose, yes, but if you are as good as you say you are, you'll look at least competitive. Do you know what I mean? And people will respect you for the most part. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, Life of Bodge says Shakur told us ahead of this fight that Tank is insecure / afraid to lose his O. The level opponent is just going to go down in level. I mean, there's probably that aspect of being afraid to lose their O. Many fighters, especially undefeated fighters nowadays in this era, kind of have that fear because the Floyd effect and how everything's kind of built up when it comes to the business of things. But the thing with Tank, especially his body language afterwards, to me, if a guy has a draw or has a performance that he thinks is quite poor, you think they'd be quite amped up to get that back and to want to right that wrong because they know they're much better than this and it was an off-night one. Him, it kind of seemed like he was okay with it. He didn't seem too bothered that there was a draw, that he didn't look that great. The rematch, he says he wants to do it, but he's not kind of clamoring to make it happen because the next opponent is set, which whoever it is. But to me, it does seem like that. I do believe Tank when he says that retirement is closer than ever, because I can just see it now in the body language of him that he's not too enthralled by this sport. He's been in it for so long since he was a kid that it seems like he's getting to the point where he's almost getting burned out by the sport because he's doing so much. He's done so much for so long. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next opponent, like you say, the next opponent is Paul or is a Jake Paul fight, a cash out, something like that, where he knows he can set his family up and all of that. But the body language, like I said, it just seemed defeated in the sense of I'm not as hungry as I used to be anymore. I just don't want it as I used to. Do you guys feel that that's the same way with Tank, that he doesn't want the top level as much as he used to?
Yeah.
Like when I was looking at his body language during that conference, the post-fight conference, he just didn't seem concerned about anything. But one thing I will say is the way I perceived it, it looked as if all of those decisions, like, I don't even mean to be rude, but Tank is a bit of a dummy, right? That's how I see things. I see him as a guy who is not very intelligent whatsoever. And as such, PBC, Al Heyman, all the guys he's got, all the management he's got, have taken all the decisions he needs to make that are not boxing out of his hands. And he's accepted that and he goes with that. Whatever they say goes. Because when he said he would like the rematch, I believed him. The tone in which he said it, I believed him. I believe that he'd want to get that rematch back. We've seen him sparring, we've seen him in fights. He has that tenacity, he has that aggression. He wants to get his lit back. I believe all that stuff. Whether he can or not is a different debate. But I believe that he wants to fight all of these guys, right? What I also believe is he's not willing to speak out against any of the top guys that are controlling or are putting money in his pocket and tell them, this is what I want. No, I don't want to do this. I don't think he has much of a say. The way in which the language he was using, I can't say it verbatim, but the language he was using was essentially, the guys upstairs have decided this is what's next. And as a result, this probably won't happen. That's how I see it. So he might want to do these things, take these fights and whatnot, but he's not willing to speak out against Amen, to go behind the scenes, to almost do what Errol Spence did when it came to the Crawford fight. Do you know what I mean? And really push for a lot of these big fights that happen. I don't think he's willing to do that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, especially with the way PBC fighters are kind of handled sometimes. It's not a shot at the PBC. It's just some of their fighters seem like they don't really have much control in terms of what the next opponent is. Jide, I don't even have to ask if you agree with that sentiment in terms of how PBC fighters are held, but do you think Tank doesn't really have much control of his own career?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. But I also feel like he does. I feel like he does in the sense where he can say, "You guys give me this fight, or I'm gone." He had, in terms of negotiation, especially with his contracts, he had all the leverage. He's had all the leverage multiple times, but he still signed with Heyman PBC because he believes in quote unquote loyalty. It's not loyalty. He knows these guys will protect him. He's come out and had interviews where he said, "These guys go over to Saudi and lose." What does that mean? You're inferring that, well, yeah, because they take tough fights. They're in 50-50 fights. So you're inferring that they're not protected when they're with Turkey, when they're over in Saudi, like you're protected in America or you're protected with the PBC. So I do think he has a say in some of these bullshit fights he's having. He's not hungry enough. Like, he's so scared of losing. He said it himself, "I'm not trying to go over there and lose. I'm not trying to, like, one of my biggest fears is to be on the ground embarrassed." Like, is the difference between him and Floyd is Floyd had that same fear. However, Floyd channeled that fear into making sure he was the best. Like, I cannot lose. I refuse to lose under any circumstance. While Tank has channeled that fear into, "I'm not going to take the fights the fans want me to see. Fuck them. You lot made me a millionaire, and I have a bunch of grown-ass men who are sexually attracted to me who are going to defend everything I do." So that is the difference. Like, Tank doesn't want it. And that's why I'm like, I want him to just leave the sport. Because unfortunately, if we have these sort of guys still being there, it's like a cancer, this idea. Floyd's my goat, but he's done so much damage to boxing. It's unreal. Into the next generation, that is, into feeding into these guys the idea that they do not need to take the fights that fans want to see, that they can just skate through their entire career and have one big money fight right near the end and just sail into the sunset. They've tried to run that play with numerous guys. It's not worked. But Tank, it's kind of like they manufactured it well, possibly because he was Mayweather's protege and he's got knockout power. So it's been it's worked better with him than everyone else. And we just need this idea to just die. We need it. The sport needs it to die. Boxing is in a good little renaissance period. And I want people to understand the Saudis are not going to be here forever. They're going to come and they're going to go. We need to just cultivate a culture where these guys want to fight each other. So if the Saudis come and go, if another benefactor comes, it doesn't change how we consume the sport and how the fighters do their responsibilities. That's the main thing. So yeah, Tank is just as culpable in the way his career has gone.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And Kirk Jones says, if Tank would have knocked Lamont Roach out, everyone would have been talking about him now. They say he's not that good. Every fighter has a off night. Yeah, but I mean, like, we can say ifs about everything. I mean, the problem here isn't the fact that Tank didn't knock him out. The problem here is that he lost the fight, essentially. That's the problem, that he didn't look good in this fight at all. He can have an off night, and I don't think anyone's kind of trying to walk back and say he's not a good fighter at all. It's just like, this was a bad performance from him, and at the end of the day, we still have to judge this performance. Even if it is an off night, it's still part of his career now, and he hasn't fought any of the guys that we need him to fight. This isn't the level that he should be fighting at. So that's the biggest problem here that most people have, is that this type of level, he chose it so he could blow past it easily. He didn't, and so he's got to hold whatever criticism that comes with it. So,
and it's like, I swear, him and Roach have sparred before. So he's taken a guy he knows everything about. He's probably knocked him out in sparring a few times. So he's thinking, yeah, it's going to be easy. And yeah, he had an off night. I'm so happy because we need cherries to keep blowing up in people's faces.
Is it an off night?
Again, I don't think it's completely an off night, but I think it's a mix of both. It's a degradation of his style where he throws very little punches, very economical with his punches, and he tends to get guys out of there. Like I said, it's the Canelo thing. Canelo used to do it, but a lot more successful, where you pick your spots of when you throw, and you throw with so much conviction, you get guys out of there. Tank has been fighting so many cream puffs, he just thinks he can just go through the motions and do it. 23 punches a round. Heavyweights don't even do that, bro. Like, that's how bad that is. Heavyweights throw more than you because you have been so gassed on the way you've been operating that you've had no one to push you. Like Zepeda, sorry, I'm gonna say Zapata. I feel like him versus Tank. I still feel Tank wins that, by the way. Probably stops him. But can Tank match that output till the end of the fight? Imagine that goes 12. Imagine Tank couldn't stop him. What would happen there? What would William Zepeda do to him if Tank couldn't stop him? Like, it would push him, and that's what we're trying to say. I'm not saying Tank don't beat a lot of these guys. I believe he does. But we need to see how good you are. We actually need to see you pushed. I want to see you against brawlers. I want to see you against slick boxers. I want to see you against counter punchers. I want to see you against boxer punchers. Then you can come and sit down. Even if you have a poor showing against some of those styles, you beat all of those guys. Then, bro, I will give you your pound for pound status. You are the best in the sport. I will give you that. But choosing B and C level fighters and then trying to sell them to me as if they're gold is just not going to run.
He also says, I'm from Baltimore City. I'm 57 years old. I think I do know boxing. I really don't think Shakur or Lamont Roach can beat him. He's going through a lot. All right. So, I mean, the fight still has to happen with Shakur. Even if you don't think he can win, fine. It still has to happen.
This is the thing, man. This is the problem. Like, all these hypothetical wins that you're giving fighters. I remember Fury got it all the time. You had it with Wilder. Oh, because XYZ beats XYZ, all these mathematical equations. Like, look, if you're so sure, right, that you beat a fighter, go and beat him. Go and show us that you can do it. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. Do you know what I mean? You said he had an off night against Lamont Roach. He could have an off night against Shakur Stevenson. Could have an off night against Keyshawn Davis. Do you know what I mean? Could have an off night against anyone, Rolling, whoever. But we want to see the fights. This is the thing. When a fight is intriguing, we want to see the fights. We don't look at fighters from a perspective of, you know what, he probably beats this guy, so he don't want to see it. So, all right. So because you think he doesn't beat, because you think Tank beats Shakur and Lamont Roach in a rematch, you think he should go and fight, what's his name? Geodude. Pitbull Cruz. Or go fight another bum because you don't know how that one goes, but you know how these ones go. Like what is it? What is it exactly? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, man. All these theoreticals and I think this happens and blah blah. Do you want to see the fight or not? That's what I want to know when people say these things. And if you don't want to see it, why don't you want to see it?
And then he puts he's going through a lot. I mean, you could probably say that for every single boxer, fighter that steps in the ring. They're all going through a lot.
Going through a lot.
Yeah.
Goodness
They're all going through
me.
something. It's not a singular case of Tank's the only person in the world going through something. It's just, this is just what it is.
You got a fighter there that should have got a win.
Kirk, you're saying Shakur fought a C-level fighter. I agree. But remember, it was supposed to fight Schofield. It didn't fight Padley. That was not meant to be the fight. Schofield pulled out, and Schofield saying he doesn't want to fight him anymore. Shakur has said from day one, I want all the smoke. When Shakur was at top rank, Tank wasn't trying to see that fight, regardless. Shakur, they were telling Shakur, "Oh, you've got to come over to PBC to make that fight happen." But there's guys that've gone over there and they've not been given fights. It's not a guarantee. Shakur has to do what's best for his career. However, Shakur has been saying, "I want to fight you. I want to fight you. I want to fight you." Remember, Tank said last year he wanted to fight Lomachenko. Lomachenko's been calling out Tank since he was 26 years old. He's been calling out Tank since Tank's been at super featherweight or featherweight, by the way, wherever, since they've been in the same divisions. Lomachenko's been calling out Tank, and Tank's not been trying to fight him. And now Lomachenko's 37 years old. All of a sudden, Tank says he wants to fight him. Like, Lomachenko's country is going through an invasion. He's going through a lot, but we don't give him that excuse. We just want Tank to fight the best guys when the public want them. We don't want to see Tank versus Lomachenko anymore because the sell by that is gone. However, we want to see Tank versus Key or Tank versus Shakur. Even if you don't give us Tank versus Key, fair enough, because Key hasn't done enough to say, yes, I'm 1A for that fight. I want that fight above everyone else. However, no one can come and say Shakur doesn't deserve that fight, because Lamont Roach don't deserve that fight. Shakur, yes, Shakur's resume is not the most stacked, but Shakur, we know he's chasing Joe. He has openly said, I am the B-side in that fight. I just want a good split. But I know I'm the B-side. I'll fight the fight in his ring, where he wants it. I'll fight him wherever or whenever. That is a guy that understands, listen, bro, I just want to smoke with you. And now Turkey's by his side. Turkey can handle Shakur's purse. Tank will get paid the biggest purse of his life. But if he's trying to A-side Shakur Stevenson, don't worry about it. Turkey will handle Shakur Stevenson, pay him what he's worth, and Tank, you will get the biggest bag you've ever had in your entire life to beat a guy you claim you're so much better than. Let us see it. That is it. I think Tank is, bro, I think skills-wise, he's so good. He's, with a bit more volume, he's my most ideal type of archetype of a fighter. Power, speed, ring IQ, footwork, southpaw. He is amazing. But I cannot rate you amongst the gods of boxing, amongst the top, if you're not fighting the people I want you to see. There was a time everyone here used to look at Usyk and say, yeah, Usyk was good, but we didn't know how good it was. Before the AJ1 fight, there were a lot of guys were like, nah, AJ probably beats him, he's too big. But Usyk ran through the entire division of the heavyweights, ran through the entire cruiserweight, because he proved us wrong constantly. There are guys who are probably a bit more skilled than Usyk, but Usyk fights everyone and he finds a way to win. You got to respect that. So
yeah, 100% agree. Look, we've spoken for an hour almost on Tank, and there's so much to cover. But let's just hope that the next fight, wherever it is for Tank, is better. I don't have that expectation, but let's see what they do. And for Lamont Roach, credit to him. He proved a lot of people wrong, and hopefully this leads to more kind of opportunities for him when it comes to big fights. Like Shakur said, if he doesn't get the immediate rematch, I'll fight him and whatnot. So I hope he continues to get big opportunities because he does deserve it, and he did get robbed of something big. So hopefully he keeps getting those opportunities. But before we head over back to the UK, we've got one kind of issue that we should really discuss, and Jide, I'll let you kind of take the lead on this, with Teofimo Lopez's comments in the last week in terms of how he conducts himself and the line that he seems to not see in the sand and always crosses.
What I'll say is boxing's always been a racially charged sport. It's always been divided along racial lines. This is not anything new. However, we're in 2025, man. Like, you've got to be a bit more sensitive with how you speak and how you do things. This isn't the first time Teofimo has been caught up in a race storm. We know at this point he's a full-blown racist. Like, Bod stuck it on you. Bod came across you and said, what are you doing all that talking? And you're saying, oh, you're trolling, or you don't really feel that, whatever. But you're out here calling Hitchinson a charcoal burn, whatever that nonsense he said. Like, if you're going to say stuff and that's the energy you're going to give, cool. But if it comes back to bite you and you don't get the opportunities you claim or you believe you deserve, you're getting dropped by all these sponsors. You're not getting all these opportunities. I don't want you to cry. Again, I'm a big proponent. I don't believe in cancel culture. Everyone here will probably know that. I don't believe in censoring people. I don't believe in all that shit. But what I do believe in is you do things and you got to deal with the consequences of it. And I do think you have to be held accountable. And I do think you have to conduct yourself in a certain manner if you're representing a business, an agency, or you're representing yourself. Turkey Al-Sheikh needs to be very careful because he replied to that post and it's like an AI response. Like he didn't really deep what was being said. Again, I don't know if Turkey holds some of these beliefs either. I can't say. However, you're now going to be tied to that. That is what's going to happen. You might be given the benefit of the doubt because people might say, "Oh, there's a language barrier. You're not English." Maybe. I'm not too sure. But you're not going to be tied to that. You're building an amazing thing in boxing, but now your detractors can say, "See, look, you're racist. You're going to be biased against black fighters because you feel we're beneath you, this, and that." That is where I'm really disappointed in Turkey because he needs to probably get someone else to handle his social media because you're putting your entire Riyadh season Ring magazine situation under duress, under risk because people pay attention to these things. And that's what Teofimo is, a piece of shit, bro. He's a coward. Terence stuck it on him. He's been talking crazy to Terence for years. Terence saw him, put his arm around him like he's his big bro, and said, on camera, what are you saying? And he was not on anything. So he's just like all these other racists. He's just a coward. But I just feel like if Teofimo suffers from these constant, and it's not just one time, these constant race baiting things he's doing, I have zero sympathy. On the other hand, if it makes him a pay-per-view star because we all want to see him lose, good for him. But he's not Floyd. He's going to lose. You're not that good. Someone's gonna whoop your ass, and I can't wait to see it. So yeah.
Chris, is there anything you want to add on that?
Tear of the donut, man. There's not even much point in bringing much light to what he does. Everyone knows he's a clown. He was in such a good position in terms of his career after beating Loma, and a mixture of his lifestyle, his ego, his stupidity. Um, it's just he's just kind of falling out of the pecking order. Like sometimes I forget he's in and amongst, the Shakurs, the Devins, the Tanks. He was in and around those names constantly. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And nowadays, it's like I have to really remind myself, oh yeah, like Tio, I forgot about him. I don't even know. I couldn't tell you what his level is at this point in time. I really couldn't tell you. He's more into the whole trolling and all the nonsense and the racism. And essentially, if a lot of these guys were serious, right, they'd just freeze them out. They'd just freeze them out. They just wouldn't fight him out of spite. And anyone would understand why they do that. So yeah, not much to say about him. He's a donut, and his career probably isn't going to go in a great way. His life is already moving a bit funny as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, not much else to add. Just I always feel that there's a lines in certain things that we do that you shouldn't really cross, and he crosses it mainly not because it's out of genuine, like he's not a genuine, he doesn't genuinely feel this way. It's more about the fact that he's just an attention seeker, if anything, which is worse because when you do it for attention, you just look fake, you just look stupid. Like at least if someone genuine, it's genuine, you know to avoid that person. But this is more, I'm going to be fake for a while and do certain things. I'm going to be fake again when I'm in certain scenarios, like he was with Crawford. So not really much to add, just the stupidity, and let's see how it gets dealt with or what he does going forward. But last topic, because we've been going at it for quite a while. Across in Britain, obviously we had the launch press conference for Eubank Jr. versus Benn, which caused a lot of controversy. I had a chat about it with Andy Clark. We did a whole 1 hour plus podcast together on Friday, so make sure you check that out. It's on the channel. Andy's really good. his knowledge of boxing, how long he's been involved in boxing, and everything he was saying. And he was there presenting the press conference as well. It was fun to have a chat with him, so make sure you check that out. But yeah, the press conference was iconic or viral, went viral to say the least, especially the first one, when of course Chris Eubank Jr. slapped Conor Benn with an egg to his face. Chris, I'll come to you first. Your namesake, Chris, not really your namesake, but you know what I'm saying. Chris Eubank Jr. slapping Conor Benn with an egg to his face. Did that kind of add a bit more fire to this rivalry and get people kind of hyped up more and take this fight a bit more seriously?
Absolutely. It's probably one of the best publicity stunts I've seen, at least from a British boxer, in a very long time. I can't remember anything being as drastic as that. Maybe you can look at Hey and Chisora. Not that that was intentional, but it really has gathered momentum and interest for the fight. I heard people who don't even watch boxing, like old ladies, not even a joke, old ladies talking about, oh, why that guy slapped the other guy with the egg, and have a laugh about it. They don't know who these guys are, but that just goes to show people who are casual are going to be invested. They already had the legacy of their fathers and their fathers' epic fights and rivalries. Then there was a whole controversy of, you know, the fight that got cancelled. And I feel like this has just added that extra bit of vim to the momentum of the fight and the trajectory of the fight. I think the fight is going to do really well. I think it's going to get a lot of attention. I think it's going to get a lot of eyes on it as well. I'll be going to the fight, so I'll be there. Um, and yeah, I feel like the tension between the two is real, and I feel like they almost inherited their father's quarrels to an extent. Not that their fathers have any issues now, but from when they were fighters, and it's manifested into its own thing. They have their own unique rivalry now. Do you know what I mean? And we can talk about how we think the fight is going to go, which is a completely different story. But in terms of the interest and, you know, the promotion for it, couldn't be any better, from the fighters themselves to the promoters and their issues themselves. It's all been really good. Hopefully they can keep it all at a decent steady level to the point where we're not getting any cancellations or any major issues.
Yeah, Jide, your thoughts like of how this week kind of went, especially for you back Ben. Has it kind of piqued your interest with all these kind of incidents going on?
Honestly, this is probably a masterclass in selling a fight. Genuinely masterclass. Beforehand, they didn't really have a storyline. They were just we're our father son and we're fighting, and it's like It's the fight initially sold off the back of that, and it would have done okay, would have done well. I get that, but now there's genuine needle, and Chris Eubank Jr. He needs to teach classes on how to get under people's skin. Brilliant. He ran rings around Eddie and Connor all week. Absolute brilliant. Like that was the wordplay. Just wanted talking to Connor Ben and not Connor Ben, Nigel Ben, sorry, and telling him, yeah, you put your arm around my throat. I understand it, but if you do that again, you're leaving without it. Like that is, it's brilliant. It's some brilliant shit. And it's like Nigel Ben wasn't trying to rise to it, but Conor Ben was biting every single time. Bro, like Chris is going to the fight. I wish a part of me, I swear to God, closer to the date, if I can get good seats, I'll probably go to the fight at this point. Like, this is so, bro. I'm hearing casual saying, bro, they're locked in, they're fully sold, they are watching this fight. This fight is gonna do crazy numbers, and it is because of, for me, Chris Eubank Jr. Now there's actual storyline. There's an actual needle to the fight. The drug testing. Look, like Conor Ben came out and said, I didn't fail the test because of eggs. That's some bullshit the WBC came up with. But Chris used that, slapped him with the egg, sunned him in that one, sunned him in the second press conference. The fact, like, bro, this is gonna be amazing. And honestly, like I said, this is a masterclass in fight promotion. If I'm Chris Eubank Jr., after I'm done fighting, I'll probably be a promoter.
Mm.
Yeah, he could sell well. He can definitely.
Do you know what's so important as well, right? The actual fight itself is not the most competitive of fights on paper
Yeah.
at all. It's really not one of the most competitive fights on paper.
Bro, Eubank should flog the hell out of him. But
Eubank should get him out of there, really and truly, with the size and the experience. If he's got anything left, he should really get. And that's the general consensus between boxing fans. But with this new added rivalry and the tension, it feels like it's almost spurring Conor Benn on to the point where people are really second guessing and thinking, actually, you know what? He's a bit explosive. We've seen he's got a little bit of power. Does Chris really have it left? Have anything left? Conor Benn's on the up and up, and this whole promotional campaign is really adding to it. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, absolute masterclass, like Jude said.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait for the fight. When it first was announced back in October, I wasn't that big on it, but now it's like, because like you say, the way they promoted it, all the controversies behind it, the drugs test, the egg slaps, the father's involved, the father's not involved. Now it's like, yeah, we need to really see this, and it will be good for the sport of British boxing, because we need a stadium fight, and we've always needed stadium fights regularly, so it'll be good to see, and that'll be a great event.
I would love it in the week, the final presser, if Chris Eubank Sr. just comes out like Money in the Bank, like WWE or like WrestleMania guest appearance, just run through, like just come and just him and Nigel start getting off. Because, but anyway, yeah, man, it's just me imagining shit.
It would be jokes, but yeah, I can't wait for that. And again, April 26th, so that's now almost 2 months away. But yeah, these things come quite quick. So yeah, so make sure to subscribe and like if you're watching on YouTube, and please share these videos and share the channel. Like I said, we're trying to make it bigger, trying to get it growing, and trying to improve our journey into boxing from an outsider's perspective and get more insight as we can, which is why the podcast with Andy Clark was quite insightful, not only in just the boxing industry but boxing as a whole. We talked about his book The Knockout. We talked about how boxing media has evolved. We then talked about his interviews with Bivol, with interviews with George Groves, Matt Macklin. We also talked about him joining the Ring magazine, how it's changed. And these are the types of things we're always trying to bring to you. We're trying to bring that different insight, and us as fans trying to get closer to the sport. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, follow us on Twitter at Ringside Fracas, and on Instagram at Ringside Fracas, and make sure you're tuned in for the next one, and we'll see you then. Peace.
Peace.